From The Butcher
to Mr. Melancholy.
This week, we'll be reviewing Trap, I Saw the TV Glow, and Playtime.
This is The Film Angle.
Welcome to The Film Angle, a podcast where we deep dive into the latest releases and unearth the classics to better our cinephilic curiosity. I'm Kris.
And I'm Alex.
Let's get into it. We have like a set scripted intro every time we do the show. I messed up one line there, but will people notice? That's the key thing.
I did notice, but I didn't mind. But I also felt like my I'm Alex felt like a little like low energy, but we'll keep it in there. We'll see how it goes. I don't have low energy, I promise.
Yeah, you have low morning energy though.
Yeah, we are. This is I say morning recording, which is not what we usually do, but it has actually just turned 12, so technically it's lunchtime. But I feel like the first at least 45 minutes of 12 o'clock is still the morning, right?
Yeah, well, we were supposed to be recording at 11, but I was late, so yeah. Sitting in your room waiting for me.
There was a little bit of that. But it's all good. It allowed me to get some notes in. We're all good. Podcast is ready to go. And we have 3 reviews for you today. An M. Night Shyamalan film.
Yeah.
A Jane Schoenbrun, is that how you say their name?
Yep.
So their second film, I believe. You know more about this than I do, Kris.
Big fan of their first film, yeah.
Which we'll get into later. And then our BFI Blindspot, which is Jacques Tati. Again, hoping I'm pronouncing everything right.
God, get me a croissant. That was great.
Yeah, it's his film Playtime. So that's the next one. So yeah, those are the 3 big films. I don't know if there's much to catch you up on this week, Kris. So
no, this is like one of the rare times, well, in recent history where we're just like consecutively recording. It's great. I feel like a functioning, responsible human being towards this podcast.
We should we just get into the reviews then? Should we? People are here for that. They don't want to hear us talking about.
Well, people there's nothing to catch up on because Alex and I just text each other complete crap during the week, or we just play Fortnite. So that's an insight into our relationship. And this is the platform where we knuckle down and talk about movies.
We don't like to catch everybody up if there's something interesting going on in our lives that maybe more people would like to know about. But
absolutely. Let's jump straight into it, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it. We're mumbling. Let's go. All right. Trap.
Okay, so Trap is the latest film from M. Night Shyamalan and follows a father and his daughter as they go to the Lady Raven concert at a stadium, only to find that the gig also doubles as a trap to catch the famous serial killer, the Butcher, who just so happens to be, well, the father figure, the dad. Fun premise for a movie.
Very fun premise for a movie. And I remember the trailer coming out, I'm going to say like 4 or 5 months ago, and it promised to be a lot of fun. I thought it was one of the better trailers I had seen in a while. But maybe it's because the premise is good fun, right? Like the premise is great.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, I think the trailer only captures about like 20 minutes of the film, would you say?
Yeah. No, you mean like in terms of sections, like the first 20 minutes, or are you talking about just random 20 minutes of the film? Yeah, because the third act completely is not in this film whatsoever. Yeah, and in that trailer, I mean.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Is like I'm pretty sure the first 20 minutes of the film is essentially an extended version of that trailer where you go, we're at a concert, daughter's a big fan, dad's tagging along. There's a lot of police presence. Why is there a lot of police presence? We're here to catch the butcher. I'm the butcher.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Now, obviously, if you start thinking about it more deeply, the
Oh my
trap
goodness.
itself
Yeah.
makes zero sense. And maybe this is something.
I would say nothing in this movie makes sense.
Yeah, I was about to say nothing in this movie makes a lot of sense if you think about it on any
Mhm.
deeper level. Which has kind of been, I guess M Night.
That's his career, right?
Yeah, he's an interesting filmmaker in the sense of obviously he had some very kind of early successes critically. I think his films have always been relatively successful box office wise, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think when you get into like his mid-career territory, like things like Lady in the Lake, and like Avatar, and he had a real mid-career lull, but certainly he came fresh off the bat with like The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, and those were really big hit Hollywood movies and still remain big hits today. And I think he's now found this new progression in his career where he makes the well-made, schlocky, is it good or is it bad movie, which
Hmm.
I think there's a real like place for in the industry, and I really really enjoy whenever one of his movies come out. I'm like, yeah, I need to see that. I need to see that, regardless of whether you know it works or not.
Yeah, yeah, because the premises are usually quite intriguing, and that alone brings you to the film.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which
It's
is
like a
which is what this has done here. I did think like out of all his most recent films, this is the one I was most like, oh, I'm really looking forward to seeing this. Does it successfully keep me in that area? Probably not. Like this is the thing. I'm in two minds about this film
all right, okay.
because it is very silly,
Silly.
very very silly. It is. I don't want to say poorly acted, but because these people are good actors
Mm.
outside of this film, but the film itself does not represent them at their best, I would say.
Various you know what, I'm gonna yeah, we'll get into who works in this film and who doesn't, and we may or not like agree or disagree. We might agree on a couple of people who I think are glaringly obvious in this film.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I find this just like completely a lot of stupid fun. But you're right, like there is like an amount of silliness and stiltedness where you're like, okay, is this just M Night kind of trolling us all, having a bit of a laugh, or is he actually just being earnest and the product is just bad? I can't work it out. I can't
Yeah,
work it out sometimes. I
there's
mean,
an awkwardness to the whole thing, isn't there?
but
Like,
but the flow, editing wise, and how the film looks and the way it progresses the story, arguably maybe the last 20 minutes kind of it goes on a bit too long, I would say. But for the most part, the flow of the film moves beautifully. It's super, super entertaining. I'm like, and there's moments that, regardless of the silliness and the schlockiness, it's kind of intense. And going on to performances, I think the strength of this film, I really like Josh Hartnett in this film. I think he knows exactly what movie he's in. And I think he's having a real blast playing this role. Maybe he's not completely attacking it with a depth that would, come from another sort of Dave Fincher-esque, like sort of serial killer story. But for this M. Night world, I think he slots in perfectly, and he is the sort of thing that I'm attached to. And in a weird way, even though this guy is like a deplorable piece of shit, you're kind of thinking, I kind of want to see him get out of this.
yes, yeah, and I do agree. Like he is, I'm in two minds about him as well because he is a lot of fun. He does
Mm-hmm.
ham it up, which is great. But there's also times he just like you're not speaking like a normal human being to your daughter.
Yeah.
Everything's so over the top and weird and stilted. And you're right about the pacing of the film. It does work in its favor. But I did find some of the camera work didn't help with the awkwardness feeling. And I started to
Yeah.
realize, like, probably like, half an hour in, I was like, I don't think the camera's moving much. We're very like still a lot
Yeah.
of the time. And when there's two characters speaking, it's like shot of my face, shot of your face, but,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
very central and very like almost like looking into the camera. And
Yeah. I
there's
felt like I was watching The Wheel at some moments. It was a bit like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
which kind of brought out the awkwardness. And I don't know. Maybe, like you said, it's difficult to know whether there's an earnestness or like you said, like there's there's more of an idea behind that, or if it is just badly made. But I also don't think it's. I don't know. I laughed a lot. I'm not sure if the film always wanted me to laugh, but there are definitely times which I think, I don't know, like it's enjoyable. But yeah, Josh Hartnett, he is fun. I'm not going to say
Yes.
good, but he is fun.
I'm going to put my neck out and say he is good. I just think he knows what he's doing. I could see the intent, and yes, there are some moments, like the moment where he adopts various disguises for this film, because the FBI obviously are honing in on this concert, trying to narrow down who the killer is, pulling random dads in a crowd. Like, none of this stuff would ever happen, but like, you really do. Like, you could sit there and you could probably miss the entire film just pointing out the glaringly obvious, but you just need to sit there and just kind of go whatever. It's like, and just laugh at it, see it as a joke.
Oh yeah,
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that way. But yeah, he adopts his disguises, and at one point he has to play like a guy who works at the fast food chain, in the concert, and he goes on the rooftop and pretends that he's just going out to get some fresh air, and he adopts this high pitched voice, and it's just like, it's so odd, but I don't know, it's just so fun. I would say the performance that really I would say killed it near the end. I wouldn't say killed it, because I was already kind of on board with the theme, but Salika Shyamalan as Lady Raven, where she has to carry the film for one reason or another towards the third act. I don't think she's strong enough to kind of do that. And I kind of find some of those line readings a little bit tricky to get through.
Yeah, but in the same sense of like, everybody feels stilted in this.
Yeah,
but yeah,
right.
I mean, there is. Yeah, she doesn't.
Yeah.
She doesn't give you any sense of like authenticity. Maybe.
No,
works very well, I think, within the concert scenes themselves.
Yes,
100%. As a musician, pop star, that kind of works. All right, I know I've gone on a tangent here, but it's just reminded me. This massive concert of like, I guess the idea was like Taylor Swift level pop star.
Sure.
Maybe not to that extent, but like
Ariana Grande sort of type.
Yeah. Was this a morning concert? Like, it's all during the day for a long period of the day.
I was thinking that. I was like, does this happen? Like, someone this level, like, kind of have a midday, a matinee concert? I don't know.
Yeah, all seated as well. Like, even in the front row, seated, which I guess was almost so that makes sense why there's so much space around these characters to film sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then, just utterly dangerous idea to just be like, all right, we know there's a middle-aged white man. I know there's a few other profiles in there, but they're just going to pull out middle-aged white men to chat to them during the concert.
I know, and just like make every single one of them look like a criminal when you get 10 police officers to escort one guy one at a time out of this auditorium.
But nobody pulls out the guy who makes his way backstage with his daughter, who is a middle-aged white guy who fits their profile. And everybody moves during the concert. Like, what's going on?
What is the sea of traffic outside in the corridors? Like there's a concert always going on inside, but everybody seems to be in the outskirts, just chilling, having burgers and French fries and things. It's like, it's quite strange.
I know I've gone on a tangent there, but but
that's the thing. It's like you kind of got to like let that kind of go if you're to have any hope of having fun with this. But yeah, you're so right. I mean, like, there's so many things that are just so contrary. And like, if somebody came to me and just said like, this movie is terrible, I'm like, yeah, I mean, you're right, it kind of is, but I could see the argument for and against. It's kind of the same thing I had with Old, where people were like, the dialogue is just so monstrously ridiculous and stilted, like a 10-year-old read it, and I'm like, yes, yeah, it is like that, but it kind of works. I don't know why. It's like it's some weird genius to Shyamalan, sort of the way I know it's. I think it's what makes his movies entertaining. If this was a straight by the numbers thriller, would it have been as fun? I don't know. Maybe with the right director, but I don't think if he had a straight script, it would have been as fun as it was. I think the same argument could be made acting wise for Marnie McPhail, who I think you were talking about, when Josh Hartnett interacts with her in the corridors. She's the mother of her daughter's bully. And
Oh
they meet each
yeah.
other, and there's this weird apology thing happening, and she kind of gets really irate and like starts yelling at his face, and it's those interactions are really really odd.
So odd, and it
Played
doesn't
for
go
humor.
anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. I
There's
don't
a
know.
weird payoff sort of thing whenever she's like when she gets when Josh Hartnett's daughter gets picked to go on stage to sing, well, to dance with Lady Raven, and then we see the reaction of the bully and their mother in the audience, and they're like, they start arguing with each other, and it's like almost like Disney Channel esque. Whenever the
Yeah,
bully gets one upped at the end, it was really 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 strange. But I don't know. I sat down, we watched it last night, and we had a lot of fun watching it. I think it definitely does not. That third act is too long. I mean, there's too many little things that happen towards the end. They're just like, right, okay, we could have wrapped this up a while ago, and I would have not been as exhausted by the end. I think it's 1 hour 45, feels like 2 hours to me, but like, yeah, I was on board with it for about 80% of the way. 80% of the way.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm so
I know.
conflicted. It's so silly, but at the same time, I had a really enjoyable experience watching it. So it's
Oh,
very
what do we
different.
think about the FBI? Dr. Josephine Grant, who's like leading this operation. Josh Hartnett Cooper, our character Cooper, he manages to steal an FBI headpiece pretty early on in the film and keeps it on him so he can hear everything that's going on internally about the operation, and so he can escape, blah blah blah. And we always hear these voiceovers by Dr. Josephine over the headset as she's conducting the FBI around the place. And it sounds like whenever you're playing one of those old 007 James Bond PS2 games and you hear Judi Dench in your headpiece telling you what your next mission is. It was so mannered. It was that was a really strange choice.
Yeah, I was gonna say very video gamey,
Very video gamey.
and her accent is just like very
Yes.
proper, very odd because they say she's like a very talented criminal profiler.
That character goes nowhere too.
Yeah, but she's also leading the FBI operation. So I didn't like fully like. Again, you look into it too much, like I do not understand this role, and also terrible profile. Like she just doesn't.
Oh yeah,
she doesn't cash him on her own, like accord. In the end, it's all to do with other people having to do it for her, including Lady Raven herself.
Yeah, and on to probably my last positive point about the acting. I really do like the choices made for Cooper Hartnett's character, where we get to see, his little intricacies as a person. I do like whenever he is sneaking into the FBI room and pretending he puts a pass on his lapel and pretends to be like one of the people serving coffees there. And an FBI guy comes up to him and asks him for a coffee, and playing the role, he just goes instinctively into the cupboard below to get the sugar, not knowing the sugar was there, but luckily enough it was there. And it just like, and little moments like this, the OCD whenever he's at home, even when everything climaxes at the end, he's fixing things, all these little things kind of like add up to making like him a bit more believable even in this ridiculous scenario. So yeah, I think, I don't know if that was intentional on his part or whether that was Shyamalan's decision, but I did appreciate those moments.
Yeah, I did want to like know a little bit more about his victims and like, why he does it, and also I think it might have been better for the film if we would have maybe see him do something awful, because I think I was never like 100% understanding of just how dangerous this guy is. We know he has killed people, we know he has someone in his basement, but like there was part of me that was just like, show me him kill someone. I want to know how. Obviously he's deplorable, but like
he does the thing with the canola oil and the deep fat fryer to that girl, and like blows up in her face, and that's
I mean the
but we don't see him like
no, and also like it wasn't to be expected that she would stand there, look at it, and continue looking at it as it continues to bubble.
You don't think like Cooper though, do you?
Exactly, I don't. I guess I don't, but I almost saw that as partly her own fault.
In what world would that be your own fault? I mean, I think I would look at it too and go like, is this thing going to blow up or not? I'm going to look at it.
Just like, cut off the heat, get away.
Oh, well, that's the magic of Shyamalan. I still haven't watched his last film, Knocked at the Cabin. You said it's pretty good.
Yeah, I did actually quite like Knock at the Cabin. That didn't feel as silly, despite being a little bit silly. But like, it definitely felt like a better made film
Yeah.
than Trap was.
I
But
saw
I
that
prefer
was
the premise to Trap. I think the premise just got me hooked.
that was an interesting trailer as well, because that was like the first 10 minutes of that film, wasn't it? That trailer was just like, here's the premise, and then, come see the rest of it. So I do like the way he builds up anticipation to his movies. Like, I ultimately like this. I see the many, many, many problems, but it's very much in keeping with Shyamalan as a filmmaker. And yeah, I'll be there for the next one, whatever he
Yeah,
plans to do. You know, if anything, they're a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun, and I struggle to be very cynical about his films of late. So
yeah,
he's got a bit of good grace with me.
I can see that. I can see that.
I say that sounds so like self-righteous. Lucky him. No, I mean, like, I think with a lot of people, I think a lot of people feel the same way. They know, we all know we're watching something stupid, but it's good. Like a good stupid.
Yes, yeah, and he's very good at making you go, maybe this one will be good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sometimes you think a couple of those early successes were just like absolute flukes. I like Signs. Signs is great too.
I've not actually seen Signs.
Yeah, yeah.
One
He's
of
got
my
some.
blind spots there. So
He's got some bangers.
there you go. Is this a banger of his?
Um, argue. I don't know, for the right person. For the right person, yeah.
For you?
80%. 80%. It just goes on too long. Goes on too long, and there's a couple of annoying things, but that is kind of the experience. But I had fun. I had fun.
Ah, good, good, good.
Alex, not so much.
It was okay. I had fun. I'm not
What-
sure if I
what-
liked it, but
What were you
had-
expecting from Shyamalan? I know you were excited for this film,
Mm.
but like, I don't know, his recent resume just like predicted this film, I think. But
Yeah, I don't know. I just thought like, oh, he's because it was like smaller in scale than some of his more recent films. It felt like potentially he was just kind of like hone his craft to make like
Yeah.
this tight little
a bit more
thriller.
devious.
Yeah, like a thriller set in a Taylor Swift concert kind of vibe. And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool. I'd watch that. I don't know.
Yeah. And were these songs Lady Raven sings in the movie, weren't they written by Shyamalan's daughter? Like, I think she wrote her own songs for the
Yeah.
film too.
So is she his daughter, or is she? Because Shyamalan obviously has a cameo within the film.
Yeah.
And he says it's his niece, and I wonder whether that was actually true. But is it actually his daughter?
Yeah, so she is one of the three daughters of filmmaker M. Night Shyamalan. So yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I did wonder if he was kind of joking about like it's actually his niece. But yeah, I think they did. I'm assuming she is a musician.
Yeah, I think at the opening credits, I remember seeing like songs written by Salika.
Oh, she was good musician. I'll give her that.
There we go. That's Trap. I mean, based on I'm saying to people listening, you haven't watched it yet, I'd say watch it. If you liked his last couple of films, I think you'll have fun. But
yeah, it's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, just go in being aware that leave your brain outside whatever room you're sitting in.
It's Friday night trash.
Oh, 100%. The best kind. I Saw the TV Glow is the latest film from breakout director Jane Schoenbrun. It follows Owen, who is introduced to a mysterious late-night TV show by an older classmate, and that show is The Pink Opaque, a vision of a supernatural world beneath their own. In the pale glow of the television, Owen's view of reality begins to crack. Yeah, it's a vague opening, to say the least, and this film is a little bit aloof, a little bit David Lynchy in that way. It's kind of like a David Lynch directed a Life is Strange movie in a little way. It's like it perfectly bridges between sort of adolescence into our sort of later adult subconscious. It's that sort of movie. And make sure, I don't know, before I'm going to talk about the film, make sure you're in the right frame of mind for this sort of thing. I don't know if you've seen. Did you see Schoenbrun's first film? We're all going to the World's Fair. Remember, I was talking about it on the show, I think, before.
Yeah, I know you've spoken about it, and I haven't seen it yet. But I saw the TV glow, made me want to see it.
Yeah,
Because I was so captured, and I didn't really have any idea of what I was getting into going in. I remember seeing a trailer for this quite a long time ago. So I was just like, I'm watching it for the podcast. I know it's a horror. Well, it's described as like a horror film, but I'm not sure I would come out of this saying it was a horror film. But definitely like a psychological dreamscape look on. I don't know. It's a film that kind of encaptures a feeling. I think is the best way to kind of.
I think that's a really great way of putting it, actually. I think, well, I'll agree with you. I think I can see the arguments for being a horror movie. Wouldn't say it's outwardly a horror film, but it also has the elements, this world that you inhabit, this sort of surreal world, and it is very, very surreal. It feels like something horrific could happen at any moment, which I think, kind of lends to that feeling. It's a very dreamy but nightmarishly dreamy film. And this is a film I kind of knew. I've seen the trailer like yourself. I kind of just went in blind and didn't read up anything about it. I just wanted to see how it played. I really, really enjoyed their first film, We're All Going to the World's Fair, which was outwardly a horror film. Definitely operating on a different level, a much lower budget. So it's so cool to see that, the film industry really got a lot of love at that film, because it was one of my favorite films that year, and just really captured that era of early Y2K, sort of like discovering the internet for the first time, being alone in your bedroom, and feeling that sort of disconnect from your parents, not knowing what you're doing, but also feeling that like you could be lost into this world and anything could sort of happen, and the nightmarish quality that kind of comes from that. And I think they kind of adopt this sensibility moving into I Saw the TV Glow. Jane definitely has this sort of sensibility as a filmmaker. Definitely has a auteurist style so far, and I just can't wait to see what they make next. So this is a film that I've seen a lot of people kind of not grasp with, interestingly, and I know it does hit a certain. It does hit a certain message that might not resonate for a lot of people, but I actually think the message of this film is pretty universal. We follow Justice Smith's character Owen, who is navigating, his teenage years as a adolescent, kind of aimless in school, not really kind of connecting with parents or other school members. Only latching on to this girl Maddie, who is obsessed with this show, The Pink Opaque, which is a sort of adolescent TV show that only runs at 10:30 once a week, and he's not allowed to watch it, so he has to sneak to Maddie's house to watch it every week and kind of keep up to date with what's going on. Very sheltered, and has a really bad relationship with his stepfather, who seems just like pretty scary whenever he comes on screen. And I don't think we ever hear much dialogue from him. A couple, maybe one or two lines, but there's always this sort of like feeling that this is like a guy you could not tell anything about yourself to or relate to in any way. And if you were to, it would end pretty disastrously. So we already kind of feel like Owen is just completely locked in on himself. And whenever he meets Maddie, it's just like, well, okay, well, she's pretty accepting of everything. She's kind of going through sort of similar things, but is outwardly trying to manage that and kind of come out of it on the other side, and eventually decides to escape and run away from home. And Owen doesn't. And the film kind of follows the tragedy of not kind of going against your own heart and kind of staying with the conservative norms of people around you to appease them and not be mocked. And that was kind of something that really resonated with me, especially kind of growing up. Northern Ireland's a very conservative, and I think still today, unless you're growing up in like, the center of Belfast or, somewhere a bit more urban, is a very traditionalist town and city. Country. And growing up there, you can kind of feel that, you're kind of locked in on yourself and you're not free to openly express. And and I think it's really interesting. I've never seen a film explore what it's like to. Usually, we follow films about escaping, about blossoming into something, but this is a film about never getting to see that potential, and I thought that was very profound.
Mm. I think that's like a really interesting way to put it, Chris, and I think that's a really interesting way to read the film, and obviously how it relates to your own experience as well, because it's probably worth mentioning that that probably isn't the intended idea of this film, because
Absolutely, yeah.
it is worth saying that that Jane Schoenbrun is trans feminine and non-binary,
Mm-hmm.
as far as our research has been able to tell us. That's how they identify. And this is very much a film about gender dysphoria. Although it doesn't say that it is a trans narrative out loud, there's nothing saying that. I think it is relatively self-explanatory as you watch the film.
I mean, one of the opening shots of the film is has the trans flag enveloping the screen.
Yes.
So.
It's not. It doesn't shy away from it, despite the fact that it doesn't actively say it out loud. But this isn't a film that wants to like tell you what's going on the whole time. But it is really interesting that is definitely what it's about. And I believe Jane has described it as the egg crack moment, which apparently is a term which trans people use, which is like this moment in time when they realize that their identity does not correspond to their kind of assigned gender. So I think that that's really interesting. And I again wasn't aware of this going in. I might have seen one review talk about trans narratives, just as I was, heading to the screening, but it was this. I think it wasn't until afterwards, because for the most part, I really enjoyed this film. Very intriguing, kind of mysterious story going on. I'm understanding the different allegories. I'm very much into it. I think the ending doesn't leave me fully satisfied, and and considering how much I was enjoying the film at the start, I kind of wanted to get like a better understanding of this. So I started reading some reviews, but mainly it was kind of this outpouring of love that I saw on Letterboxd, mainly from people who are trans, and just them saying that like this film completely articulated these thoughts and feelings I've had, which are not thoughts and feelings I've had personally. So it's kind of difficult to relate, but like I was just astonished at like how many people had very similar reactions to this. And I thought, wow, that's very special.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I really like the film. It wasn't made for me and my feelings, but I love the way that you've kind of read it as well.
Yeah, I want to be clear. I don't want to be like sort of like gentrifying like somebody else's
oh no, I don't
somebody else's intent to fit my own narrative. It's just, as a viewer, whenever you watch a film and you're not necessarily relating directly to experience, but you need to find a way. And I think a great film can really go beyond that and broadly appeal to everybody, a feeling that exists somewhere else. And I think that's what's so good about this film, is that like I still felt that interconnection to the themes about escaping and maybe not getting to escape. Even though it's not directly specifically what the film's talking about, I still felt that deeply, and as well as sympathizing for the actual cause of the film too.
Yes, but I think those are the best kind of films, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
They are capturing feelings that are felt by many, but some people obviously relate them to different experiences. And yeah, can we talk a little bit about the ending, or maybe I think from the part that Maddie comes back into the picture 8 years later, and she reveals to Owen that the Pinko Peg might not be this TV show. It might be this real thing, and the reality that he's in, he might be trapped, essentially, and the Pinko Peg is real. Then you get like very kind of, then it becomes very Lynchian in terms of, very vague. The plot kind of spirals a little bit, big time jumps. This idea that Owen is very much trapped in this world, and I think we are supposed to assume that Maddie was correct, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's because I am a plot guy. I love plot. All right, I'm a story guy. I do like films that are vibes, and this was a vibe film. But
This reinforces our conversation we had last week, right?
yeah, and I think it doesn't give me a satisfying conclusion to the story because it becomes less about story from that moment
Yeah.
onwards, I would say. And obviously that works for a lot of people. It didn't work for me because I was so invested in this film, and the way it ends, I just felt like,
Yeah.
I was maybe I was too intrigued in the story
It,
elements that
it
it was just like, no,
certainly,
it's not about the story, it's about the
yeah.
feelings. And I was just like, I wanted a conclusion to the story.
I would say it's certainly an abrupt ending. Like it is a pretty flat 100 minutes. This film, and I could have, I was really, like I said, this film is very strongly about vibes, and I could have been involved in this world for another half an hour. I think you could have. I think the movie earned enough grace where I could have like sunk myself into that world even deeper for a little while. It's just it's so intriguing. But no, I know what you mean. I'm not sure if I felt the same way. I feel like the movie had a sort of, it existed between two worlds ever since the beginning, and I think that is part of the way our characters speak and interact with each other, and just the general color palette of this film the whole way through. Just everything about this is like tangible but out of your reach, which is some. I love these sort of films, and that's I think Lynch is the perfect comparison because I think Kiss is very in debt to things like Twin Peaks or Blue Velvet, those sort of things that kind of exist in our world but aren't quite right. And I really love films that operate in that level. There's some great music in this movie too. I mean, that's kind of part of it. I'm a big fan of Phoebe Bridgers is actually in a scene in this movie.
Yeah.
King Woman. There's loads of other very famous sort of right now sort of indie bands, and a snail mail. Lindsay Jordan is actually one of the stars of the Pink Opaque. She plays Tara, and that's quite cool to see her on the screen.
And as well as, like, I know we're talking about the music, but the Pink Opaque stuff is so great as well because the TV show feels very like
right. It feels like
2000s CW.
Oh, so good. And like I think they use one of the episodes you see the opening credit font for like what introducing that. It looks so good, and they actually borrowed the font from their Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV show to use at the opening of that episode. But you're right, it looks so good. They must have actually shot it on those video cameras because it looks like it was just plopped straight out of that era. And the attention to detail on that TV show is so good that was kind of what was carrying me, like you, over the first half of the film. Was like, I'm so invested in what this TV show is. It's had like 600 episodes. Every episode looks like has a villain of the week. It's so well established and thought about in this film that I wish it almost existed outside of the world of watching this movie. And
also the way you access it as well, because I love because obviously this travels through different periods of times, and it's like, you and I were very much in that era of, all right, first of all, you have to watch it at a friend's house. Then you have to videotape it or have to be there at the exact time it starts. And then later on, it becomes more and more available. And almost the, like this kind of, I don't know if it's the shine almost wears off of it as it becomes more and more available. It's less of this elusive thing anymore. And I love that as Owen streams it, he's like, this isn't what I remembered it being. Yeah. But it's like, it's too available. It's not become this magical rare beast anymore.
It's crazy. I think that's a great, it comes pretty, I guess it's building towards that moment for the film, but it comes pretty late where we have that conversation about nostalgia. That kind of becomes a theme of the movie. And you're right, when Justice Smith Owen is watching the show again, and the characters, our main two actors, are two cool heroines, are replaced by these kind of, dorky looking kids, and the villain of the week is in a crappy costume that looked nothing like what we saw earlier in the film. And it's just like, you're so right, it just looks nothing like that. And I know it's a bit explicit, and it's saying, it's exactly not the same show as it was before, but that is kind of what nostalgia is like. Revisiting things is like, playing old video games or watching old TV shows that you thought looked amazing. They look kind of cute in comparison now, I think is the best word. But and I think this film has a lot of nostalgia for me. It kind of like made me want. I have an old CRT, early 2000s TV screen downstairs, and this movie like made me fall in love with CRT screens again, like those old grainy, fuzzy, black, white noise screens. And I'm like, I almost maybe after the film want to link it up and stick my old DVD player in there again, or get a VHS. I do think that it's a medium that is discussed in this film and is lost. I love VHS tapes. I mean, I used to watch horror movies on them when I was a kid, and horror movies do not work as well on these 4K streaming. If I'm watching Halloween 1979 on my screen right now and it's in 4K, it's not going to work as much as it did on my old crappy TV where I could barely make out where the fuck, Michael Myers was at any time. It was so cool. And so, yeah, I find this film just to be a real all-encompassing sort of beautiful, just a beautiful film, even though it wasn't directly made for me or you. I still find things to latch onto, and there's some beautiful moments. What about the planetarium scene where Maddie has that monologue? Is a beautiful scene where just kind of discussing the themes of the film, of the experience of escaping, and talking directly to the audience with these beautiful sort of cosmology map in the background, and all these astrology patterns, and it's so you feel like you're in a trance watching this film, and
so dreamy, isn't it?
So dreamy.
I feel the whole film feels like a dream in a scary dream.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say. I'm kind of in love with this film, Alex, and I get the reservations. It does end quite abruptly, but the ending did stick the landing for me, and I did see it as this heartbreaking cry for help. Just watching Owen just be a complete shadow of the person that they could have been. Just seeing it. I think the thing that is really interesting for me is early on we see Owen has behavioral like sort of tics or problems socializing, and he's very internalized in everything. And then by the end of the film, when we see an older version of himself, he's all those things still, but completely personified. He is like a quivering mess that can't speak to, barely can string a sentence together or talk to people walking past him. And it's so heartbreaking by the end of the film to see that. And I know it comes quickly, very, very quickly, but I felt that it was earned, and I just thought, find this heartbreaking, this film.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, like mentioned, the ending didn't work for me as well. But the more I kind of talk to you about it, the more like
it's one of those movies.
It's like that's just such a small part of the experience, and the experience overall is a fascinating one. And I definitely need to go back and watch Jane Schoenbrun's previous film.
Oh, it's so good.
Apparently, the way that these two films are kind of interlinked thematically anyway, and then the idea was like this trilogy of thematically linked projects, with the final one being books. So they're currently writing a trilogy of novels called Public Access Afterworld, and that's gonna end this kind of trilogy of thematically linked projects. So very interested to see how that turns out, and very interested to read those books. Obviously Jane Schoenbrun's a very interesting person, so with a lot of interesting ideas and artistic kind of flourishes, which are just absolutely fascinating. Not seen a film like it, so
fast becoming I know 2 films in, and that's very crude to say, but soon becoming one of my favorite filmmakers, and just for their sheer sort of like how they've established this sort of world building and style that is completely their own already is really, really impressed me. Can't wait to see what they come up with next.
Yep, 100%.
Definitely watch it, everybody, but like make sure you're in the right headspace. If you watching this late, you didn't get to it in time, it's on VOD. Make sure that you're sitting up, watching this falling into your TV, leaning into it. It's one of those films that's going to really envelop you if you give it the time of day.
This is the section of the show where we catch up with our ongoing series, our blind spots on the Sight and Sound greatest films of all time list. As usual, we're making our way down the list of films we haven't seen before, and this week we're on number 23, according to the Letterboxd list. Letterboxd, which is the 1967 film Playtime. So kind of a difficult film to describe, but I'm going to try here. Playtime is a somewhat large-scale experimental film from Jacques Tati. How do you think you pronounce the name? Jacques Tati?
Tati. Yeah.
Tati. And it follows multiple characters, including one that Tati himself had used in other films, almost like his chaplain.
Sure.
Because it is very slapstick as well. And it follows these characters around a futuristic version of Paris. Now, this futuristic version of Paris probably looks more similar to the version of Paris that we know now, and every city that we know now, than at the time. It was very much commenting on this idea of this invasion, in a way, of modern architecture to the very kind of historical-looking cities, and also kind of commenting and critiquing on the fragility of modern life, or at least that's kind of what I got from it. Is that
not necessarily not attacking it necessarily, but like definitely going like, I miss the old Paris.
Yeah. You don't think it was attacking it a little bit? Maybe?
Sometimes it was definitely satire. This is definitely a satirical film where it is kind of like, it's a little bit like it's a bit cheeky fun, a bit of cheeky fun at it, more than like I am outwardly, this is atrocious sort of thing. I don't know. That's what I got from it. It's too gentle. It's too gentle to feel that way.
I don't know, because we'll just dive into different like sections, I guess. But the one that kind of stood out for me as attacking it was in this almost like this. They're in a skyscraper, and there's this fair going on, and there are posters around this. It's like an industry fair, I guess.
An expo.
An expo. That's what I'm trying to say. And you can buy all the office furniture that's in every building ever in Paris right now here, and it all looks the same, and it all looks modern and sleek. But also there's posters for other cities, and each one is the same skyscraper. Comes to London, and you can just see Big Ben just slightly covered by the big skyscraper.
Yeah, you got Hawaii, and it's the same skyscraper, but it's got a palm tree on the right hand side of it or something.
Yeah, like our cities are starting to look the same. And this is something that I have seen in real life. I do believe that cities are becoming more and more boring a lot of the cities that I visited around the world, they have the same things and they kind of look the same, especially more so city centers rather than outskirts of cities. I think that's where you start to get more kind of, cultural, architectural, that kind of stuff. But you plonk yourself in a city center somewhere, you're gonna get a H&M, you're gonna get a McDonald's. And they are starting to look the same.
Designed around economical functionality first.
So Jacques Tati, he knew it was coming. He knew the great H&M invasion was coming, and every city would have H&M.
You don't actually see H&M in the film. He did. There's some explicit images in this film that he actually did predict. I mean, early on in the film, seeing like the inside office blocks where people work in their little pods, like 20 years later, that became a regular sort of thing. That became part of the industry. And
it's slowly trying to change now because nobody wants to go work in these boring old offices anymore.
No. If you play Stardew Valley, I'll tell you all about that.
Yeah. Work from home for a bit.
I don't. I envy you.
Work from home is great, but there's a benefit to having a nice office space to go to that isn't boring, and I think that is kind of, anyway, this is what this film kind of does. It makes you think about these things. You don't really see Paris as you would think to see it through its iconic locations. You briefly see the Eiffel Tower in the distance at one point, and then in the reflections of the glass in some of the doors, you get to see some of the other kind of
I think it's just the Eiffel Tower and Montmartre we see later on in the film. So it's literally those two pieces of iconic, architecture.
And then you get all the American tourists that are going around going, "This
Yeah.
is just like America. This, oh, they've got all the same stuff we do." And then when they want to see France, the closest thing they can feel to this idea of France that they have in their minds is a flower stand in the middle of a street, and they can't get one picture without something coming in that
Yes.
isn't French or like this idea of of old school France.
Mhm.
And yeah, to be fair, I liked the criticisms, the look at this, the idea of how we as a society are changing, and I like all this, but I got the message within the first 30 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, because this film is quite long for the type of film and the message and how gentle the antics are.
Mm.
Um, and we follow, obviously, we do follow the titular, well, not titular character, the main character, Monsieur Hulot. Is it Hulot? Or,
Something like that, yeah. Which is Tati's like Chaplin type character, isn't he?
yeah, yeah, he's like Buster Keaton or Chaplin in that sense, but he's a bit more, he's easy on the eye. He kind of blends in with everybody else. He's sort of just
Mm.
like your grandfather. He kind of got lost in the city center for a day. And
Uh,
so it's quite fun. It's quite fun having somebody. He's not as aggressively trying to be funny on screen. Kind of just melds into the atmosphere, and because everybody else around him is also quite funny and quite silly and clumsy too.
mm,
So there's I quite like the restaurant scene, which kind of takes up the whole second half of the film,
yeah.
where it's just this whole sort of, oh, you didn't, okay, I'm seeing, this is an audio medium, but I'm seeing visually that you were like, yeah, I had enough of this. I actually really, that was my favorite part of the film, and I thought because it's worth mentioning that Tati put a lot of his own personal financial investment in this film, like personal loans and everything,
Mm,
constructing this own man-made town just to kind of realistically inhabit this film for that set period of time. And this restaurant is so well thought out. It's so silly. Like the comment on just furniture generally in this film, like whenever Hulot sits down on one of the chairs at the beginning of the film, and it just leaves an indentation, and then like a sponge, and then just goes back into perfect form afterwards. And then later in the restaurant, when everybody's sitting on these very aggressively tactile looking chairs, and they have a crown image on the back of each chair, and every time somebody gets up out of the seat, it leaves an indentation, almost like a branding on their back that can't ever be
mm,
removed. So it was very, very Pink Panther. It was very much very silly, that whole restaurant scene, the whole opera of everything going wrong from like ceiling coming down to clothes being ripped to dinners not being made to the front door glass being smashed and the
mm.
doorman pretending to justify his job for the rest of the night. He's pretending because all the doors in this movie are glass and see-through, so he's so the comment of him holding the doorknob and opening the door for people the rest of the night and nobody notices and he gets away with it is pretty funny. But that's it. Like, this movie is just kind of like, I get the message. I get the message. It's really kind of like, yeah, it's quite nostalgic for that sort of perfect, distanced Paris that we used to know or we've seen in other films and what we get now. But also, it's a lightly amusing film. Like, you're not going to be laughing your ass off this whole thing, but it's
No.
I was definitely chuckling, more moments than not. To be fair,
Oh, I was kind of the opposite. I did chuckle at a few things. I think the comedy's quite light, and I understand
it's very subtle, very subtle.
the way it's shot. The whole film doesn't really have a plot. So we're going back onto the plot versus vibes thing. It's very much putting you in these locations,
Hmm.
and it's shot on 70 millimeters, so it's very wide angled. Everything is in focus. But that almost means that like nothing fully draws your eye because there's so many characters doing so many different things. There's almost so many different
Yeah,
little comedy touches thrown in depending on who you're following at that point. But the
yeah,
film never asks you to follow a certain person most of the time.
yeah,
uh, you know, because it's trying to comment on this kind of modern design being style over actual logic and comfort and all this kind of stuff. So you're picking out pieces, and the dialogue is dialed down purposely. it's supposed to blend into the background. And then there's not really a couple of scenes maybe have a musical accompaniment, but for the most part, it's just sound design. So it's the sound of cars outside or weird kind of futuristic techno sounds, because that's kind of the idea behind some of these buildings, is that they're built like spaceships essentially, with lots of buttons and nobody knows how to work it. And especially when we have the Hulo character as our Chaplin type character, and I don't know what his use in previous films has been, but I thought I almost wanted him to be more Chaplin-esque, and I wanted the music to reflect this, because I thought I'd laugh more if I knew what I was supposed to be looking at, or like what I was supposed to be.
Even his costume is like blends in. It blends into the background sometimes, and you're like, oh, he's in the scene. I see him over there. Yeah,
it's like you're sitting down for 2 hours and just location shots are being like thrown in, and
it almost looks like concept art of like architectural concept art. The way the camera is positioned sometimes, it almost looks like artist impressions of what this building is going to look like. I think I don't know if that was intentional, but it looked like that to me. But
I mean, the funniest thing is like how kind of how much it kind of did predict about where we were going. But yeah, I don't know. I struggled with it, and again, it's interesting. You go to the Letterboxd reviews, or like I was watching this on YouTube. This it's out there on YouTube, and I looked at the comments, and everybody was just like, I had this changed my idea of films. This was I didn't have that feeling, and I don't know what I'm missing here. But I definitely found the restaurant scene to be a bit of a slog near the end. I thought this film was hitting me over with the same messages over and over again, which I got, and I just think like it could have been a lot shorter and got its point across. I appreciate the effort. Obviously, it looks great. The sets look incredible. The style is unique. And yeah, Jacques Tati, although at the time he bankrupted himself making this, the set, which was essentially, he was making a small section of a city, which he did then, like, the idea was he then kept it in a corner of Paris where like other filmmakers could go film projects there.
Okay.
And then that's where it was called Tativille, I think.
Yes, Tativille. Yeah.
So like very cool. Obviously, I don't know if like the immediate aftermath of this, where he was bankrupted and everybody hated the film, which is like a lot of these films, like you said, a lot of them do get a lot of bad press and then be reevaluated. But yeah, obviously now he can look back and be like, oh, okay, I did a good thing. It's on the Sight and Sound list, and a lot of people love it and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, for me, I just didn't work, and maybe it's because, like I said before, I'm a plot guy or whatever it is, but I was there for a good hour of the film, not bored, but I was just like, I don't know how much I've got left in me before I start to zone out, and then the second half of the film I'm starting to zone out a little bit. So
well, I think thematically, if I can take anything away from this film as a last point, do we mention the bit about the apartment block where Tati's character, Hulot, is always meeting people that apparently he was in the war with or in the army with, and they keep inviting him to places where he reluctantly doesn't want to go. I really like the scene where he meets somebody and he invites him to his home, which is in the apartment block. It looks just like all the apartments are exactly the same. They've got like a little window frame where you can see into everybody's home, and they're all doing exactly the same thing, kind of living in pretension. But then at the end of the film, at the end of the restaurant, when everything's falling apart and people from different nationalities are coming together and they're all sitting around the piano and drinking and gallivanting, there's a little bit of optimism in the film here, even though like all this architecture is intrusive, that we haven't like lost our sense of selves, that we can still kind of come together and be human beings. And I thought that was quite a sweet moment towards the end of the film. That was quite a lot of fun. But yeah, like I'm with you though, where I'm not like, there's nothing on here where I'm like, oh my goodness, this is life affirming film. For me, I really, really appreciate it. And I like slapstick. But it's just a little bit too slight in all of its little echelons for me to be kind of like in love with this thing, but I appreciate it.
No, I know I sound a little bit down on it, but I do appreciate it too. And other people might think I'm an idiot for wanting this, but after seeing a couple of Charlie Chaplin films in this, I'm just like, this would have been more fun if Charlie Chaplin was in this. I don't know. I know it's different. I know.
He did do Modern Times, and that is kind of like his version of it.
Maybe my sensibilities are just somewhere on that scale rather than on Tati's scale, and that's fine. But obviously, I'm not. The film has now done well in terms of critical and where it sits within the canon of film.
Yeah.
So don't change it. Clearly, a lot of people love it, but yeah, it just didn't work fully for me. I don't think I would have put it on my list of the greatest films of all time.
Look, I like the film a lot, but I agree with you. It's not bowled me over like a lot of these other ones have on this list. It's just being, I don't know if that's just like yourself. I feel spoiled by all the great films we get to watch in quick succession, and we don't actually experience them in real time. And that's an aspect of context that you need to bring to your watching experience. But I had fun. I find it amusing. It felt like something I would have watched with my dad when I was younger, and would have enjoyed watching my dad laugh and mirroring him, as opposed to like watching it by myself. And it was an amusing time, but maybe a bit too long.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, 60s France on this list. We struggle from time to time here on the film angle.
Yeah. But we both struggle with different ones, which is always interesting.
Different ways. Yeah,
I love French cinema. It's so interesting.
Oh yeah, when it hits, it hits. But sometimes it can be just a little bit too meandering for me to like. Just cling on to any one specific thing. But maybe I have still time to grow as a film watcher too.
Yeah. Maybe they didn't like conforming to the norms, did they? That is one thing. Very, very rebellious in
and that's
the way
the thing.
They do filmmaking, and you got to give them credit for that.
And that's the thing. I really, really appreciate that. But because you're not living in that space in that time period, I'm 60 years removed from that, and I'm not living in an era where I'm repressed by a certain type of filmmaking. You know, I'm stuck having to watch the same thing in this breath of fresh air. I'm looking at it from an educational point of view, and it doesn't maybe stick the landing as opposed it would have done for a viewer 60 years ago. But I do appreciate it on that level anyway. But yeah, that's just me.
True.
That's just me.
So true. There you go, guys. Jacques Tati's Playtime. So next week on the BFI Blindspots, we're going to be watching. I don't know how to pronounce his first name. I've always pronounced his second name. I just said Ozu, but yes, Yashiro Ozu's Late Spring from 1949. This is our first of at least two, I believe, Ozu films on the list. So a very well regarded Japanese filmmaker. And yeah, I have seen one of his films before, I believe. Have you seen any of Ozu's films?
I'm just looking for his filmography right now. I have seen none of his films so far. I'm very, very aware of Tokyo Story, but never pressed the button on it. And Late Spring, pretty much the same story. So I'm really looking forward. I love auteurist Japanese cinema. As opposed to auteurist French cinema. No, I still like that. But I have a feeling that this is definitely up my alley, so I'm very much looking forward to this film.
Yeah, he's very well regarded in the film world. I've seen one of his films, which was Good Morning, which I did like, and yeah, Late Spring, Tokyo Story, heard a lot about them, but never, like you said, press play. And this gives us the excuse to finally sit down and press play. So it is on the BFI player. So if anybody wants to do their homework, they can jump on that before next week. We're only going to be reviewing, at this point anyway, we're only going to be reviewing one other film next week. And it's a film we've reviewed before. But don't let that make you skip the episode, because it's slightly different. It's almost a different experience here. So everybody knows Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. That's the second one, right?
Yep.
I
Into the
should know.
Spider-Verse was the first one.
Yep,
Yeah.
I'm the Spider-Man fan. Well, we are watching it together, live, in concert, with a full-blown orchestra. And I think I've been on the record many times saying I think it is one of the most fantastic, unique scores.
Yep. Very propulsive. Yeah.
I love the score for this film, and it is one of the things that makes me love this film the most. So, when the chance came along to go watch that live, and we're still not 100% sure if it's going to be with composer Daniel Pemberton or not, but
I would love it if it was. Yeah, the website is a little bit vague on that part of it.
I know he's turned up before to these, but whether he turns up to the one in Bath, which is where we're off to see it, I don't know. We're gonna be reviewing an experience, I guess, next week instead of so much of a film. But obviously, it all plays into it. So very excited to kind of talk about how that plays out and that medium of seeing something like that, especially when the score for that film is so good
for both films. Yeah,
I wonder if we're going to get an intermission though, because it is like a 2.5 hour film. But the score plays, I feel like it doesn't pause throughout the film. Like it all like molds into it. It rarely ever stops. And it makes me wonder if, poor orchestra, man, they got like a lot to play, and it's very unique and very different.
I reckon they'll just like insert a fade to black screen somewhere in that film, and because you can't. And the dexterity, like I remember that score. I've only seen the film once, but I remember the score being such a standout, and it's so fast paced, so energetic, so emotional that like 2.5 hours, their fingers will be bleeding by the end of that if they were to take a break, and probably myself as well, because it's a really edge of your seat sort of filmmaking. I can't wait to watch it with you, Alex. Yeah. I've needed an excuse to go reclaim my viewing of the Spider-Verse world, so I'm looking forward to going back and doing that with you, and it'd be really cool to share our experience with you guys on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Something a little bit different there, especially as the cinematic world is a little bit quiet right now, I would say. Yeah,
there's things on the horizon. I just need to do my collating and collecting of where I'm going to be turning my attention to next. But there are things coming up. I think America are getting some good releases at the minute there where we're just like a little bit behind on. We're waiting for some things. But but good for a quiet spell, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. Very excited for that. Shall I go Spider-Man costume? I don't know. Maybe.
You might get a spotlight on you at some point during the night, and you might end up,
We wouldn't want that.
Yeah, start climbing the walls.
We wouldn't want that. Maybe just the Spider-Man thong it is.
So that has been the episode for this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review. We really do appreciate it. If you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at The Film Angle.
And we also have a Film Angle playlist, so if you want to listen to what we listen to, you can find that in the show notes. Be sure to catch us next week for more cinematic discussions. Goodbye.
See you later.